Dana Ensminger, and I'm an elementary art teacher at Rossi Elementary School in Vineland, New Jersey. But today, I'm going to be your art teacher too. What kind of art have you created before? A landscape, a portrait, or even a still life? But what about artwork that tricks your eyes? That kind of art is called optical art. Optical has to do with your eyes. You may have even checked out a book from the library on optical illusions. Optical illusions and optical art have the same amount of positive and negative space, thus tricking your eyes and your mind into seeing something different every time. Let's see if you can figure out which of these famous artists is best known for their optical art.
Choose your character.
Awesome job! You chose correctly. Even though those artists looked a little bit familiar, you chose right by selecting Marcus Cornelius Escher, or better known as M.C. Escher. M.C. Escher is very famous for combining art and math into creating beautiful, impossible-looking optical art. Let's find out more about his life and his artworks now.
Maurits Cornelius Escher is a Dutch artist born June 17, 1898, and died March 27, 1972. He is a graphic artist known for his realistic prints that achieve bizarre, optical, and conceptual effects. M.C. Escher's style of art is considered modern art, but it's also optical and mathematical. Surprisingly enough, Escher wasn't that good at math in school. M.C. Escher's preferred art mediums included lithographs, woodcuts, and mezzotints, which are all examples of printmaking. When you printmake, it's kind of like a stamp. Let's learn about positive and negative space. Positive space refers to the main focus of the picture, while negative space refers to the background. Look at this picture. Let's take the black as the positive space. Here, the positive space shows a piper. At the same time, if you concentrate at the rest of the white space, which is not covered by the black, you could see a lady's face. This sort of push and pull usually happens when there's an equal amount of positive and negative space, or when one space creates a shape that forms around the other. Let's look at Escher's fish and frogs. If you take a look, you can see the fish are in black at the top, and as they form closer to one another, they create the shape of the frog in between. The negative space between the fish create the frog, and then the negative space of the frogs create the fish. And now for one of Escher's most famous artworks, Relativity. This artwork depicts a world in which normal rules of gravity just don't apply. The stairs, people, and buildings are all simply impossible.
How would you like to create your very own artwork inspired by M.C. Escher? Today, I'm going to show you how to create this impossible-looking cube design. Just go gather the following materials.
A pencil, doesn't have to be giant. Scissors, normal size preferred. Paper, any you have at home. And, not the cereal, but a piece of chipboard, like a cereal box. Alright artists, I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to go collect all your art materials. Remember, you're going to need a piece of paper, a piece of chipboard, like my soda box here, or a cereal box, pencil, and a pair of scissors. Alright artists, about 1 minute has passed. So while we're waiting for some more of our friends to find their materials, let's take a look at some optical illusions. This optical art is called Rubens' vase. Stare hard. What does it look like to you? Which object do you see, or objects? This optical art is sometimes referred to as the two-face, one vase illusion. Did you see the silhouette of a vase in black and two inward-looking faces looking at each other in white? If you didn't, try to stare in the middle and let whichever part you didn't see come better into focus. This light bulb illusion is going to be a little different. Stare closely at this light bulb for about 25 seconds, then immediately stare at a white wall or a white sheet of paper. You'll know when the 25 seconds is up when my screen changes to white. Then, what will you see? Whoa, did you see a glowing light bulb? Let's give our eyes a little break. Ascending and Descending is a lithograph print by MC Escher. This artwork depicts a large building roofed by a never-ending staircase. And here's one more of Escher's famous works, Drawing Hands. Drawing Hands depicts a sheet of paper, out of which two hands rise. Both hands are drawing one another into existence. Alright artists, it's been about 3 minutes. Time to get started. Awesome, so we have our art materials. Grab your chipboard. If you have any flaps on the edges, you can trim them. Now, we need to freehand this shape onto our chipboard. What shape is it? It has 6 points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 6 sides. What shape is it? That's right, a hexagon. Hexagons have 6 sides and 6 points. Now, I certainly don't expect anyone to have a hexagon block on hand. So let's start with an easy shape we can all draw, a square. Because if you look closely, the square's corners point towards the corners of the hexagon, with additional points at the top and bottom. Let's prepare our template on our chipboard. All you need to do is draw a square. No more than an inch on each side. No need for a ruler either, just guesstimate. If you have something you can trace, like a Lego square, that would be great, but it's definitely not needed. I'm using a Sharpie so you can see my drawing clearly. No need for you to use one. A pencil is just fine. Make sure you have some room around your square so you can turn it into a hexagon. Now that I've drawn my square, let's look at how the angles should come out from each corner. The angles are kind of subtle. They're not really sharp. They kind of just go out to the side and over a bit. So I'm going to draw a small diagonal from each corner. Keep it on the flatter side. My left one's a little high, so I'm going to adjust it by making it a little bit lower. Now, don't forget the top and bottom. I'm going to draw a line coming out of the top center and a line coming out the bottom center. This is also a great way to draw a gemstone. Now, match up all your lines in the shape of a hexagon. You should only need to draw 6 lines here. Remember, hexagons only have 6 sides and 6 points. All done. Now I'm just going to label my hexagon. And it's time to cut it out. Carefully cut along your lines. You can say to the outside of the line or right on it. Just keep it the same all the way around. Fantastic! Now you have a perfect hexagon template to work with. Now it's time to trace our hexagon. You need to make sure the top point is pointing to the top of your page and the bottom point is pointing to the bottom. Don't have it tilted either way. Make sure it's up and down. Position your hexagon template right in the center of your paper. It doesn't have to be perfectly centered, but as long as it's close, you'll be all set. Carefully trace your hexagon template in the center of your paper. I'm still just using a Sharpie so you can see, but a pencil will be just perfect. Just slide your template over. Have the two sides match up, and now you have to draw 5 of your sides instead of all 6. Use the previous hexagon's line to act as the side of your other hexagon. Slide it again. Now I only have to draw 2 lines. My hexagon goes off the page, so I don't need to draw the left side of it. Keep going until you fill up your entire paper. Try not to have any spaces between your hexagon. The shapes will match up. I just made 1 line across. Now, fit the bottom V into the top V of your other hexagons. I only have to draw 4 sides now. Trust me, the first line or 2 are the hardest, only because we have to draw so many lines. The more hexagons we trace, the less lines we're going to have to draw, because they kind of fit into each other like a puzzle. Make sure your hexagon shapes go completely off your paper. It does get tricky up here because you're drawing very short lines and you're not drawing the entire hexagon template. Ta-da! Woo! We got through the tracing portion. We just filled our entire paper with hexagons. What does it look like to you? I think it kind of looks like a metal fence or even a honeycomb. This process of tracing was actually called a tessellation. Like some of MC Escher's artworks, some of his optical art looks like pieces that fit into one another. Tessellations are an arrangement of shapes closely fitted together in a repeating pattern without gaps or overlapping. Here's that positive and negative space again. The negative space between the birds eventually form a fish, and the negative space between the fish eventually form the birds. This lithograph is called Earth, Sky, and Water. Can you find all three? I can see frogs, birds, and fish. All right, time to get back to it. How do you think we're going to turn these hexagons into cubes? Watch closely and see how easy it will be. First, place a dot in the center of your hexagon. Then draw a diagonal from that dot to the right, the left, and the bottom corners. I'm going to start with that first hexagon that I drew in the center. Dot in the middle of that, diagonal down to the dot, diagonal down to the dot, and a vertical line to the bottom. Think of like a wide letter Y. Do this for every single hexagon. We now have to turn these flat, two-dimensional hexagons into three-dimensional looking cubes. Take your time with the parts of the hexagons near the edges of your paper. Most of the time you won't have a complete shape, so you're going to have to pretend the rest of your shape extends past your paper. Make the diagonals go in the same angles as before. Sometimes you won't even have room for your dot. So again, pretend it's there and draw your diagonal. At the top, I'm just going to draw vertical lines from the V straight up to the center. Home stretch. We're almost done turning these hexagons into cubes. Are you starting to see the optical illusion now? Amazing job, artists! You've done it again. We just turned these flat, two-dimensional hexagons into three-dimensional forms. Who knew a hexagon could become a cube? Let's look at a value scale real quick. When we're talking about a color's value, we're talking about the lightness or darkness of a color. MC Escher uses this a lot in his artwork. The black and the white and the grays in between really give a push and pull effect, showing depth and illusion while playing some tricks on our eyes. When you use value, you can show better space in your artwork. Darker objects seem to recede back into space, while lighter, brighter objects come forward. Hey look, these stairs look like the blocks we're about to make. Even though this value scale shows a 7-color gradient, we're going to only focus on 3 of these colors. First, our hue. Hue means pure color. So if we're talking about a color like red, we're talking about the pure, straight out of a paint bottle, red. Next is a tint. Tint is white, or when you mix white with your hue. So if you mixed white with red, you would get pink. And now our third word to know, shade. A shade is when you mix your hue with black to get your darkest value. If we were to mix red with black, we will get a darker red, like maroon or burgundy. Now we need to label. We're going to use a T for tint, an S for shade, and an H for hue. If your eyes are playing tricks on you, grab your template and place it on top of one of your hexagons. That way you know exactly where to start. I'm going to start with my center hexagon and work my way out. Label the top T for tint, the left S for shade or shadow, and the right H for hue. Every top shape should be a T, every left shape should be an S, and every right shape should be an H. Use your template to help you find your other hexagons. It'll get easier as you go. There's a simple pattern throughout. Remember how some of our hexagons go off the page? Well, you're only going to label part of those, like S and H over here. You'll also notice your T's are going to be next to each other, while your S's and H's alternate. Make it easier on your eyes and your mind by just finding that Y shape. The inside of the Y is the T and the top, while the left and the right of the Y are your S and your H. Check for little shapes, especially around the edges, that you may have missed. Great job, artists! You did it! You labeled everything. Let's take a little break from our art and look at some optical illusions again. What do you see in this illusion? It looks like it's moving, right? I promise you, it's not a movie or a GIF. The ripples and the lines the way they get closer and further apart make it appear like it's moving. Close your eyes and relax for a bit. Now let's try a color changing one. Stare at the center of the American flag. You can blink, but don't change your focus. Almost there, just a little longer. Can you see it? Can you see the American flag in the correct colors now? Alright, let's relax our eyes one more time before we get started on our art again. Now it's time to go in and color. If you have coloring supplies, you're welcome to use them. If not, you can use a pencil like me. For your T, you can either color super lightly with your pencil or just leave it white. I'm going to start by coloring my H. I'm going to color as normal as I would with a pencil. Remember, hue is your pure color, so it shouldn't be too dark or too light. For the S, I'm going to press harder with more firm pressure to really get a darker pencil color. You may even have to overlap your coloring, left to right and up and down. As long as it looks darker than your hue, you're good to go. Remember when I said it's going to be a pattern? Well, your hue will always be in between two shades. So I skipped a space and I'm coloring my H over here. If you're using coloring supplies like crayons or colored pencils, just adjust your pressure. Color really heavy in all your S shapes and color lightly or medium in all your H. And if you want, you could color super lightly anywhere you find a T. Sometimes you might go a little too dark with your value in your hue, so that's what erasers are for. Yours is looking so great. Keep going, we only have a little bit more to do. Okay, maybe a lot of it. But you're getting the hang of it, right? Take a step back from your art. Are you starting to see the push and pull with the lights and darks? It should start to look like the top of your cube is coming forward, while your left and your right, your shade and your hue, are receding toward the back. Keep going, artists. We're over halfway there. Your art's looking amazing already. It kind of looks like steps if you look at it closely. Be super careful when you get into these really tiny shapes near the bottom edges of your paper. If you're not careful, your paper might rip if you color too hard or too fast. So just do the same stroke either up and down or left to right to keep your paper from ripping. All right, stop. Everybody freeze. Stretch those wrists, stretch those fingers. Pull them down, pull them out, roll them, roll them. Ah, doesn't that feel good? We're almost done. We just gotta get a little stretch in to finish strong. Now the last thing I'm going to do is take my eraser and erase all of the letter T's. You might also notice that the side of your hand may be a little messy. I also noticed that because of this, I might have smudged some of the pencil into my white tint part of my cube. So you can also erase and clean up the white of your cube as well. Wow, artists, you did it! Can you believe you turned a flat hexagon into a cube, into a whole page of cubes that looks like an optical illusion?
Amazing job, artists. We have time to learn one more way to create another optical illusion. So, either flip over your paper on the back or go grab one more piece.
Let's give our friends a little bit more time to grab another sheet of paper if they want. For those of you still with me, what do you notice in this illusion? How many triangles are there actually? Our brains have a way of taking incoming visual information and organizing it into a meaningful whole. An example of that is this illusion called the Canizza triangle. The brain organizes individual elements and sees a white triangle floating in the middle, even though no triangle exists. What do you see in this ambiguous figure? Are you seeing a rabbit? Or are you seeing a duck? Depending which way you're looking, left or right, you might see one or the other. Last one, these black and white lines make it look like there's curved walls around a cylindrical center. Kind of reminds me of a tornado. Do you see as the lines get closer together, that part of the picture recedes further back, while the wider lines look like they're coming forward. I'm going to show you now how to create a simple spiraled square. So watch this first to get an idea of what we're doing, and then you try. I'm first just going to draw a square. Doesn't matter how big or small, but for this purpose, I'm making it like a large medium size. We're going to make a mark on the right in a clockwise order. Once you get to the bottom, it's not going to be on the right side. So you can always rotate your paper so your mark is always toward the right. I'm always going to start my line from the bottom left corner. It might not always be on the exact corner, but it's always going to be on the bottom left side. I'm going to start my line from the bottom left corner and bring it up to my first mark. Then I'm going to go diagonal to the right mark, down diagonal to the bottom right mark. And now I want to stop on the line I just did. Do not start in that bottom corner. Drag it up toward the line you just created. You make a new line, you make a new box. Just going to highlight where my marks need to stop for my new box. Now my left mark, I won't stop there, but I want to stop along that side. You just want to go up to your mark, over to your mark, down to your mark, and then back up, but stop on the line. See how it looks like a square is just twisting ever so slightly along the center of your initial square? Keep going, but take it slow until you get the hang of it. As you near the center of your spiral, you might have to adjust your lines. It might eventually be a triangle. So now that we created this twisted square spiral, let's draw more and then shade them in. Pick a spot to start your square. I'm going to start in the middle. Now that you saw my first example, you shouldn't need to make the helper marks every time. You should just be able to go freehand now. Remember, draw your line to the right of that first corner. Make your next line below that second corner and to the left of the bottom right corner. Now diagonal up past your other corner. Keep going, tilting your square each time. You can keep drawing these twisted squares the same size, or try a variety of sizes. To make these twisted squares look even more dimensional, I'm just going to shade with my pencil around 4 of the curves on each of the squares. It sort of reminds me of a pinwheel or even a shell. It might get a little confusing on where you're supposed to shade, but if you look at each side of the spiral, one side is wider and the other side is more narrow. It's up to you if you want to color the more narrow or the more wide. It'll still look great.
Thank you so much for joining me, for learning about MC Escher, creating not one but 2 pieces of optical art, and allowing me to teach you art in your homes today. Remember, I'm Mrs. Ensminger, and I hope you have a great day.